Hi everybody, this is Karak from ACG, and today I'm stoked to bring you the review for Massive Chalice from Double Fine. It's a game that aims to breed the classic XCOM turn-based gameplay with strategy-light aspects of games past and present, sort of mix it together and present it in a new package. I bring up breeding for a reason, as a large subset of the game is getting your swayback DNA-crippled leaders together to make the two-backed beast as often as possible, so that you, the ever-living ruler, can keep flooding the land with warriors to fight off the ever-encroaching enemy that look like the monster minds from Jason the Wheeled Warriors. Let's get this rolling. Remember, this review is caffeinated, which means streaking through the stratosphere with the speed of supersonic scramjets. Also, this review is especially for Clifton Moore, a good goddamn guy and all-around friend of the channel. Word, Clifton. Time to check this out. Graphics are up first. Well, first impressions are everything. I think we all know that, and some of us have found that sadly in life, beauty is a better first impression than a bearded YouTuber, and so too do crisp, sharp graphics beat out whatever the hell I'm looking at here. Now, let me explain a bit, because it's not to say that the game is always ugly, and the overall world map and your forces in the HUD all do have a cool, somewhat medieval banner look to them, but they also have a very jagged overall aesthetic that the artists have aimed for that remind me of old polygon models translated into piñatas with large, oddly shaped flat surfaces, removing the detail and sometimes the attitude and charisma from the player's designs. Also, these characters pop out the most ugly-ass babies known to man. These are the type of kids that your friends have and you need to look away as you say, "What a cute kid," or "That sure is an interesting head." Additionally, this wreaks havoc with the shadows at times, and depending on what angle you're looking at a character in specific screens, you can get a flickering, nonsensical shadow pattern due to an error in the lighting engine, or perhaps some of them are just so ugly they bend light. Even worse are the enemies, which are some of the most oddly uninspired and dead-to-the-eye bad guys I've seen in a long time in a game. Plant-based enemies that appear to be a mix of low-poly models and even lower imagination. An enemy should inspire something within a gamer, I think, like fear, awe, trepidation, horror, terror, and sometimes even pity. But these enemies inspire nothing. Their animations are basic, and their designs match that, with bloated sunflower, tree with many tree trunks, and ripe beet with legs, initially making out the stable of bad guys. It's just really lackluster design as a whole. The landscapes and locations are also fairly uninspired, despite attempts to use special effects and explosive enemies to gussy up the locations from time to time. Even the overall strategy map design seems to be missing like that magic you would expect when you see it in these games. The lack of ambient animation or useful visual cues leave the entire section feeling basic, since you spend an almost laughable amount of time watching a time tick by on an overland map. I would personally think you would want it to be eye-catching at the very least. All of this is seemingly tied together with a HUD that is deceptively charming at first glance, but sort of seeks to outwit you at every moment as you progress deeper into the design. Without extreme care, at first you're going to find yourself choosing to marry, then unmarry, then marry your leaders again, as if you suffer the world's worst case of terminal cold feet. Not to mention that when you go in and upgrade skills for characters, there's sometimes an odd delay in readout information, or no readout at all, and that can have you buying skills you never wanted because all you really wanted to know is what the skill did. Well, guess what, cuz? You're gonna know because you just bought it. Now, depending on if you're on the console or PC, this could actually change. And luckily, on both, you can, of course, use the controller, which to me just seemed a little bit better for this game than the mouse. Overall, the game runs fine, but that is certainly not really saying much, since it doesn't push the graphics engine at all, despite turning the resolution to 4K and running all the anti-aliasing I could. Altogether, I found it too difficult to connect with the identity of the game. It's marred by somewhat poor HUD and almost criminally dead information and strategy screens. Sound, music, and voice. Sound is one place where the game did seem to shine, with crossbow bolts zooming across the sizable acreage of the war zones, alchemy pots exploding both where planned and possibly not where planned, and all manner of the enemy's plant life attacking you left and right. The sounds were excellent, they were layered well, they were spread across the spectrum as they should be, and effects were placed to effectively mimic each environment and the sound structure therein. So that was really good. When it came to music, I really liked it. Each track was unique, fit the location or situation really well. There was no special call-outs to any track, none that I just thought were absolutely excellent in my book, but they fit the medieval location and theme perfectly, and I wouldn't buy it, but some of these tracks would actually be pretty cool for casual listening. Now, when it comes to the voice...
Before, you were making choices on the battlefield. Now, we'll be making choices on the battlefield of life. What?
Come on.
I will not apologize if I'm passionate about it.
You know when you guide the heroes in battle, well, sometimes the people, your heroes included, will want your advice on matters they can't decide themselves.
They'll be putting their choice.
It's excellent. The Massive Chalice itself talks. In fact, that's pretty much the only voices you're going to hear. And there are two spirits inside this Massive Chalice yakking at one another or at you as you're making decisions, making mistakes, and just generally making almost any moves. The voices are done really well, and though there's rarely any emotional connection, as they aren't really engaged in any of the battles with you, just talking about it, from time to time there is a bit of resonance during specific moments to make them feel tied to the location. So I really did like the sound, music, and voice as a package. Up next is the thing that matters the most, and that's gameplay and fun factor. First up is gameplay. You know, a man who could talk once said, "War is cruelty. There is no use trying to reform it. The crueler it is, the sooner it will be over." And sometimes soon is like 500 years, and that's the crux that Massive Chalice brings. You decide how to play as the benevolent land's ruler, or you play as a FIFA official and fight, build, and basically hump your way to victory across 5 or more centuries. Unfortunately, one thing that's not going to back you up is the story, because it's really just an incredibly basic mess of you becoming a ruler embedded into your throne without the ability to leave and basically listening to a giant talking glass with multiple personalities for 500 years. I'm not kidding, it's pretty much, that's the plot. It's like a damn Albert Brooks skit. Quickly, however, you do realize that the game's theme is more go to battle with the army you have and not the army you would like to have, because at all turns the enemy, who are the affordably named Cadence, will invade your land and you'll have to send out teams of up to 5 hunters, shadowjacks, alchemists, and upgrades to those characters with slightly cooler names into the war-strewn lands, because if you don't, the Cadence slowly shrink your landmass like cold water on libido. The overall strategy game has you marrying and remarrying the lords and lordesses of the lands, as well as filling special buildings with warriors from your stables to train new warriors or help research go faster. And at times, the game does become a fairly interesting push-pull of resources. Except here the resources is, of course, heroes who can hump effectively, because this might be one of the first games that I can personally remember with a fertility rate that matters so much. And fertile is good, because you need to make babies to fill out your armies, and though fields regularly plowed don't always yield crops, for the most part put 2 liters into a room and a baby pops out at some point, which will then take up arms at a certain age and have all the good and bad that their parents had. The skill system is actually great, with a chance that both positive and negative skills will be passed on to children, which cultivates a sort of raise them hard and hardy kind of mentality, which I really liked. Additionally, think Mumra the Ever-Living running a brothel without access to proper birth control, and I think you pretty much have the plot down to a T. During the strategy moments when not in battle, there isn't much to do, however, with only one research taking place at any one time, and everything in the land really going into that research, and that research taking up to 10 to 20 years. It is usually like this. Find a research, click it, go to the strategy page, click move time forward, and wait, and wait, and wait. And then people start dying of old age, rickets, or possibly just boredom. You go in, and if the remaining family members available, you remarry them, which can result in some really odd pairings. But this is a medieval world, so a 9-year-old married to a 56-year-old isn't weird. Or is it? But regardless, people get married and they have babies, and sometimes when the babies are born you can look at them, but I suggest for your sanity you don't. Other times, little story prompts pop up, and in almost Sims-like or Sims medieval-like fashion, you can choose a couple choices, and sometimes you get a good trait from the choice that's applied to the characters involved, and other times crap hits the fountain. The problem is that all this feels so goddamn random. But luckily, at some point the Cadence are gonna attack, usually in 2 directions, which results in you only being able to effectively administer sweet Shadowjack justice to one side. Pick that area, pick your army, and go to war. It's then that you're thrust shamelessly into a shallow XCOM sibling gameplay. No, really, this is some seriously shallow gameplay. Even with upgradable heroes and some special moves, the fact is that the game's overall gameplay is frustratingly skin deep. Move and attack, or move really far and don't. Get constantly stopped by alerts that the enemy has seen you, only to watch that enemy run back and forth between two trees like they're showing off their new leafy cod pieces. Really, the AI at times is passable, but at other times you begin to wonder if plants really should have been the bad guys here because, well, they have plant brains, which are good for growing, but you rarely see a fucking blackberry stage an ambush for a gardener armed with bush killer. Some enemies have attacks that age you, some take levels away, spawn bad guys, shoot from afar, but no matter how the mix is, there's almost no symmetry of use from their side. They don't do anything that even hints at AI aside from finding a beeline directly to you and just sprinting to you and trying to die. Additionally, you only have a couple different types of characters in the first place, and though they upgrade and some have specific specials that others may not have, you're not really married to them, nor should you be, which means many times those that would differentiate themselves are mulched up in the tide of war, which might be a plan of the game, but in actual reality, it just makes for a bunch of frontline level 1 to 4 troops with almost all the same skills going out and mostly just dying for the cause, or performing the same basic 2 attacks. Where XCOM and other games foster a feeling of, I gotta keep this dude alive, remember in Anaheim when we stopped that alien incursion? Here, you're like Patton, looking around going, who are all these fucks? You never seem to share victories with them, even when they do live through a battle. When it comes to skills, some characters have a type of stealth, but with no real overwatch or bonuses from it. That's almost as useless as it sounds. Others have double shots and stunning moves, the latter of which becomes so important in later fights that not having a stunning shot of some kind is absolutely stupid. It becomes almost absurd. Luckily, the traits of individual characters do impact battles, and do so in fun and unique ways. For example, some characters do really well when surrounded by comrades, while others do better when a few comrades have taken a dirt nap. They can turn the tide of battle rather spectacularly, but it's also one or more areas where it feels like the game just doesn't have enough flexibility. And to me, you see, games that offer such a mile-high view also need to cultivate a personality and have to draw a fine line between personalization and patronage. Additionally, there's some funneling that occurs here. See, Massive Chalice pretends not to lead you, but by the gameplay itself, you are indeed led to do specific things, resulting in multiple games feeling somewhat identical, and real strategies never really having the time, manpower, or even skills to develop. The smallish roguelike ideas within the game brush up a bit too effectively against the kingdom ruling. In the end, it all usually ends up playing out somewhat the same every single time. Fun factor. You know, I can't say I enjoyed this much at all. As a representation of its genre, which is a mix of strategy, kingdom building, and humping simulators, there are a couple things to like, however. The skills, traits, and lineages is a unique system, and I enjoyed trying to get the perfect mix of parents in there. And relics, they're basically weapons powered by the blood of your own fallen if someone dies. Sometimes they basically create a relic, and you get to give it to another character. However, in the end, they aren't really powerful enough to turn the whole tide of a battle. They're interesting nonetheless, I'd say. But all in all, it just wasn't fun. In fact, throughout the game, I was bored. I tried to embrace the beauty of controlling the DNA in my kingdom, but due to the wide view of the overall kingdom ruling, I could never really get into it. And I tried to embrace a couple standards of battle and create a legion of fighters that had specific traits, but both normal war, age, and battle just made that unenjoyable to the extreme. In the end, I was left wanting a great deal more from this game. So as you know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or never talk about it again rating scale. This is a rent, or for you PC owners out there, a wait for an extreme sale, because most of the time you can't rent PC games. Console owners, you can wait for a sale too, though I think at least for one console, you may be able to get this at the amazing price of free coming up here soon. The game's hodgepodge of views just didn't grab me, and though there are a couple excellent points, they were smashed into history by shallow gameplay on both ends, making strategies feel unconnected and battles feeling uneventful. This game may be a bit of fun once or twice, but it just never grabs you in any way. It's not only not very enjoyable of a representation of the genre, but it feels far more like a mobile game than a true console or PC title, and the absolute dearth of AI or flexible gameplay and interesting overview means it falls apart rather quickly, and it just doesn't prove its worth. So that's it for me. If you liked the video, hit like. If you disliked it, hit dislike. If you can, check out our Patreon or donate on PayPal. Peace out.